Hey, trending topics. This is Miss Corey. Today we're going to do U1-L6 picking a good news source, which is sometimes a very tricky thing to do. So, before we begin, here's my first question for you. So, you just have to answer one of these questions. In your own words, what does bias mean? Or, what do you think of when you hear the word bias? And don't give me any I don't knows. I want to hear your best guess. So here's the bias definition from the Oxford Dictionary. It is a strong feeling in favor of or against one group of people or one side in an argument, often not based on fair judgment. So here's another question for you. What is an example of a biased opinion or action? Again, don't say I don't know. Just try your best. So there are a ton of different examples we could go through. Here are some of the big ones. The first one would be like ageism. The next one would be something like sexism. And another example of bias may be racism. And of course, there's probably one of the biggest, hottest topics of right now, which is political bias. Now, this doesn't have to be just the United States, it could be other countries around the world as well. And there are dozens of more types of biases. So much so, I linked the Wikipedia page if you're interested in looking more at it. You don't have to, but there are so many biases. I mean, if we learned about them all, we'd be sitting here all day. So, everyone has biases, okay? So, biases are formed due to many different factors. Some of the big factors that form biases include family and friend opinions, community influence, the media we consume, especially social media. That is a huge one, but also things like books, TV, radios, movies, things like that. Personal experiences, and also societal stereotypes. So, what I hope for this course is that you can spot biases in media and that you can ask questions about media sources. Where are they getting this information from? And also that you can break some of those biases in your own mind, which is hard to do. So, we're going to talk a little bit more about biases later. Actually, we're going to start that next week. But I wanted to do this slideshow this week so we kind of are off to a good start when choosing news sources. But right now, I want to focus on how to choose a non bias ish news source. So here's a question for you. What do you think is a way to spot media biases? And when I mean media, it could be things like newspapers, social media, online articles, TV, radio, movies, things like that. So there are 5 questions I want you to ask about biases, and we're going to go through them all today. So, the first question I want you to ask is, who are the sources? Where are these news people getting their information from? 2, from whose point of view is the news reported? 3, is there a lack of diversity? 4, is the language loaded? And we're going to talk about what that means. 5, do the headlines and stories match? So, first question, who are the sources? So, what is a source? A source is where the information is coming from. So, you want a source that is reliable. So, sources with true and solid evidences make really good, reliable news. Sources with false and vague evidences make bad, untrustworthy news. So we'll go through some examples. So here's the first example of a true and solid evidence, which makes good, reliable news. So here's the news article. It says volunteers hope to restore Camp Parsons in Watertown, site of many memories for North Minneapolis children. So reading this article, you'll see that it says Watertown, Minnesota. As the summer camp season comes to an end, the Hope is One local camp story is just beginning. WCCO went west of the metro to Watertown, where there's a place known as the magical Camp Parsons. Stephanie Young Simmons is a Camp Parsons alum. All right, so you're probably like, how do I know if this news article has solid evidence? So, one of the first things you need to look for is, did the reporter go to the place that this news was happening? And the answer to that is yes for this article. So it says WCCO went west to the metro to Watertown. So we know they went to the place, they went to the source of the news. And they also interviewed someone who was an alum there. So Stephanie was a camper at this campground. Um, so she's going to have the firsthand experience with it. So that makes a good news source. So, what about the bad news sources, the ones that have untrustworthy news? So, for example, here is a post. It is on Facebook. It says Mark Zuckerberg dead at 32, which we know today he's still alive. So the first thing that you should look for is, where is this news headline coming from? And this is a Facebook post. Now, anybody can post anything on Facebook, okay? True or false. So always look at your sources, especially if you're getting them from social media, because a lot of the times they can be really deceiving or just plain old false. The other thing is, who is this article written by? So it's this news source called The Shovel, and like, who has ever heard of them? And they also don't disclose who told The Shovel that Mark Zuckerberg is dead. And just really, those are red flags that you should look for with a false news story. So, second question, from whose point of view is the news reported? So, we're going to look at this example here. So, it says, crying myself to sleep on the biggest cruise ship ever. The ship makes no sense, vertically or horizontally. It makes no sense on sea or on land or in outer space. It looks like a hodgepodge of domes and minarets, tubes and canopies, like Istanbul had it been designed by idiots. So, of course, this news article is very opinionated. So, you have to ask yourself, what about the other people on the cruise? Maybe other people enjoyed it, even if this Gary guy didn't. Maybe others did. And what about the engineers who designed this ship? Would they agree that it's a hodgepodge? What would they say? 3. Is there a lack of diversity? So here is a news article. It says, new Minnesota state seal and flag face criticism, receive support. So in the article, it says St. Paul, Minnesota. Minnesota elected officials gave the state a history-making gift to mark its 166th birthday on Saturday. But not everyone appreciates the gesture, as recent polls suggest about half the Minnesota population favors the old flag. So this news source claims that there's a poll, but they don't ever link anything to the poll. And you also, with the poll, you have to ask yourself, what poll was taken? When was this poll taken? And who answered the polls? And what kind of people were asked about their opinion about any topic? For example, this one would be like the state flag. So you have to ask yourself, is there a lack of diversity in who is being questioned in the news article? Okay, number 4 is the language loaded. Now, what I mean by loaded language is words or phrases biased towards a view favored by the person using them. So, pretty much the person who's writing the news article or saying it or whatever has really like, they're trying to persuade you on something. Okay. So, they're exaggerating their words to make you feel a little bit more passionate about whatever they're writing about. Um, Probably one of the best examples of loaded language would be things like gossip magazines. For example, here's one from the National Enquirer, which is kind of a interesting gossipy magazine, but it says nuclear apocalypse over Ukraine. So this is super loaded language. It also goes on to say things like, why craze Putin, we can't back down, A bomb targets in your state exposed. So It talks about this nuclear apocalypse, right? But that never happened. There was never any nuclear warfare. And it also uses big, kind of emotional words like apocalypse, crazed, ensure survival. Those are all very extreme words. Another one would be like with celebrity gossip, like Britney versus Justin, the war is on. Was there really actually a physical war? No, there wasn't a physical war. And then the fifth question, do the headlines and stories match? So sometimes news articles will put out like a really fancy headline that really is attention getting, but then the rest of the article doesn't really follow what the headline was going for. So for example, cows lose their job as prices drop. So after reading the article, you're like, wait a minute, is this article really about cows losing their job? No, it's about milk prices, right? But just that attention getting at the headline makes you want to read the rest of the article, even though the rest of the article isn't really about cows losing their job. So, again, here are the 5 questions to ask. So, number 1, who are the sources? 2, from whose point of view is the news reported? 3, is there a lack of diversity? 4, is the language loaded? And 5, do the headlines and the stories match? So, I'm going to pause here for a second. What questions do you have about these 5 questions to ask about biases? If you don't have any, that's okay. Just type none. All right, let's take a practice quiz. I'm going to show you a headline, and you will tell me which of the 5 biases questions you should ask about the headline. It is not graded on right or wrong. Just try your best, okay? So, question number 1. Look at this headline. Tell me which of the 5 biases questions you should ask about the headline. Yeah, first thing is from Facebook. So, anything on social media should immediately raise a flag. Where are they getting this information from? Who are the sources? Question number 2. Tell me which of the 5 biases questions you should ask about the headline. So, this one, take a look. That's right. It should be number 2. From whose point of view is the news reported? But it could also be number 3. Is there a lack of diversity? So take a look, right? It's about a guy who's going to go and taste ice cream. And he said, I sat out on behalf. So it's only one guy tasting the ice cream. So it's just his opinion. It's not like there's a diverse array of people whose opinion this is. Question 3. Tell me which of the 5 biases questions you should ask about this headline. That's right. It's going to be the same as the last one. So, 2, from whose point of view is the news reported? And 3, is there a lack of diversity? Because it's talking about Minnesota's most famous restaurants you need to visit. But who's judging that? Whose point of view is this from? Question number 4. Tell me which of the 5 biases questions you should ask about this headline. So it says, oh, baby, welcome to the firm, referring to a law firm. Yeah, this one's a little bit trickier. It was hard to find an example for this one, but it should be number 5. Do the headlines and stories match? So, looking at this, you're like, why would a baby be in a law firm? That's crazy. Only lawyers can be in law firms. No, the article is actually talking about a baby who was born to Meghan Markle, who played a lawyer on TV. All right, tell me which of the 5 biases questions you should ask about this headline. That's right. Is the language loaded? Yeah, so saying that there's a literal chamber of death and there's 10,000 pills, that's pretty extreme wording. With is the language loaded? That one really comes into play a lot with the gossip magazines. All right, nice job. So, what questions do you have about the 5 questions to ask about biases? And if you don't have any, that's okay. Just type none again. All right, let's wrap this up. Now you know a little more about biases, and now you have a few more tools to spot good and bad news articles. So, all news sources will have at least a teeny tiny bit of biases. Some are really more biased than others. Um, so, what I did for you is I made a list of news sources that can help you out. So, let's click on that list. And I posted it in the Schoology page as well. So, this website called All Sites Media Bias Chart has a really awesome chart about what different news articles kind of fall into what biases. I also copied and pasted the picture into this document as well. But of course, it doesn't go through all the news companies, it just goes through some of the big ones. Okay. And then what I did for you as well is I put in links to some of those big news sources. So if there's an assignment and it's like, look for an article about something, or you have to do something with news, you can just have these links right here at your resources already. And I divided it between national, international news sources, and then with local news sources as well. And again, these are not just the only news sources out there. These are just some of the big ones and then some of the local ones. All right. Let's get back to the slideshow. So again, keep mindful where these news sources fall on biases. Next week, we're going to talk more about biases. So next up, you're going to watch U1-L6 Exploring Google Trends. It's just a little tutorial of how to use Google Trends. And it's going to be helpful for what we're going to do almost every week, which is called the weekly rundown, which we look at what was trending over the weekend. And of course, if you do have any questions, please let me know. That's literally why I'm here. I'm here to help you. All right, that's all. Thanks for watching. Bye.